PEMCAST.
Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of PEMCAST. My name is Debbie. And today we have a very special guest. Her name is Esther Lee, otherwise known as Yeji by her Korean name. Esther is wife to Pastor Chongdae Lee. She is a young adult and serves as the leader for prayer ministry. Some fun facts about her is that she is an avid reader, a self-proclaimed thrifting queen. She has a very adorable dog named Harley, and Yeji and I are actually in house church together. Yes. And so, I had the privilege of getting to know Esther this past year, and we became very good friends. Yeah. And I'm so excited to have you on because, I think for those that have met or are friends with Esther, there are endless stories, endless testimonies, and just colors to her personality that you just get to know and find out the more you get to spend time with her. And so hopefully we'll be able to touch a little bit on it today. Hi, Yeji.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
How are you doing today? How do you feel?
I'm very nervous.
Are you?
Yes.
I was like,
I'm very nervous, but I'm very excited.
Yes. We're excited to have you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about this thrifting part of your life.
Thrifting, well, I've done it since I was like really, really young with my parents. It has become, I think, like the cool thing to do now, more so to be vintage and stuff like that, which is great. But I'm so glad that thrifting is not like this taboo anymore. Because when I was young, it definitely was. And, I obviously did it because my parents, I'm one of 5, so we have a huge family. And obviously that was like the most affordable option to do. But I've always loved thrifting, even to this day. So I thrift like everything, especially books. So as you all know, but from books to like homeware. When we were younger, I have this specific memory of like going up to a classmate and I was like, oh, my parents just got a couch for like $5. And I was like showing off and I could see the confusion on her face. But then I didn't realize in that moment like how weird that must have sounded because like I said, thrifting was not really like a well-known thing or like, it wasn't something that you really bragged about, so to say, back in the day. But I thrift very proudly now. Yeah. And I thrift a lot.
Thrifting is great.
Yes.
I mean, you're telling me you like thrifting and you grew up thrifting, but I think you're a serious thrifter because you had a little endeavor during the pandemic.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I did. I started my own, it's not even like a business. It was just like a little Insta store that I did called...
A shop.
Yeah. And I sold a lot of things on there, like from thrifting. Recently, the passion has kind of been stirring again to actually have like a serious thought into opening like more of an online store or like a website for thrifted items.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like Esther always comes to like house church or like events or weddings with like a fire outfit and we're like, where is that from? What store did you get it from? And she's like, oh, I thrifted it.
Yeah, 99% of the time it's thrifted.
It's amazing.
Yes.
So you mentioned you also like to thrift books. And I know that recently you also started a book club.
I did.
With Pam.
I did.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So there are so many other avid readers at PEM. Yeah. And I was talking to my friend Rebecca recently, who's also a YA at PEM. And we were just talking about how hard it is to find motivation to read on our own. And she was over. And then, when you're talking to someone about a passion, I feel like it's always reignites that passion, even if it's something that's been like dormant for a while. So that kind of happened with Rebecca. And then one thing led to another. And then I was like, let's just do a book club again. So then we did that.
Fun.
Yeah.
I feel like
I'm
it's
excited.
hard to allot out time for some people to read books. And I feel like you had 1 year where you like were reading mad books and your list was so long. What do you like about reading, and how can you encourage someone who like wants to get into reading or like doesn't do a lot of reading?
Yeah, I feel like most people who think they don't have time, I mean, I would say majority of people. Some people actually, I understand, like if you're a busy mom or someone, you actually might not have time. But I would say most people who want to read, if you just consider the time that like maybe you spend on your phone or anything like that, like 30 minutes can go by so fast on your phone and it can feel like an eternity when you're reading. But I think that's why it's all the more important to allot that specific kind of discipline, designated time to do reading or, you know, whatever you want to do. Because I do think that makes the process easier. And I think, yeah, like I said, reading is so much more enjoyable when, you know, you're doing it with someone. And also find a book that like fits you. Don't try to read something that you're not actually interested in. You know, I think I had a period of time where I tried to do that. Like I try to read all classics or like something that like just isn't me, you know what I mean? And I wanted to try it, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I know what I like. Like, for example, anytime I find myself in a reading rut, I usually try to turn to like a thriller or a mystery, because that always, I have to finish the book. And once you finish a book, I think that gives you motivation to keep on going, you know? So yeah, those are just kind of some little things that I have found that help me along the way.
Nice. So what are some of your favorite books?
My favorite books. So one of my favorite books is called The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. Basically a mystery thriller novel. Probably another one, Redeeming Love, Francine Rivers. It's like a story based on the story of Hosea from the Bible. It's one of the books that was really formative for me, I think. I read it very early on, and the writing is like okay, but I think the story itself like always moves me. So that's also one that I recommend. And that also was made into a movie recently, and it was actually filmed in South Africa.
Ooh.
Yes. And then another recommendation. Oh, The Silent Patient. Also a great book. Also
on my list.
Yeah, thriller, mystery. So you can tell I like mysteries and like thriller books, but that's also fantastic. By Alex Michaelis.
So yeah, I feel like whenever you share about your thrifting adventures or books you read, you have like this ability to like captivate someone. And like Esther is usually very passionate about the topics she talks about. So if you guys need any thrifting advice or book recommendations, I feel like Esther is your go-to.
Come to me. You can go thrifting.
Go to her.
Yes.
So, you know, you're a young adult now. You're working. You know, started a family with Chongdae.
Yes.
Not a larger family. But I'm curious to learn about post-high school Yeji and sort of like your college background. I would love to know what that whole journey was like.
Post high school, I had a very non-traditional college journey. So in order to explain this story, just to give a little bit of background about myself, I was born in Korea, so I'm not a citizen. And basically, I'm currently under DACA. And if you're unfamiliar with it, it's under President Obama when DACA was done by executive order. But basically that means that I don't have a pathway to citizenship. And I say that because that directly impacted, you know, my college journey. In high school, I was aware that this would affect my life. And I also, you know, God bless my parents, they didn't know how to like handle and kind of teach us about the situation that we were in, you know, and I'm sure they were scared and confused themselves, like being immigrants and, you know, just trying to make a life for us. But in the midst of all that, you know, things got complicated, and that's how kind of we ended up in the situation that we're in. So basically, you know, without all the right paperwork and stuff like that, my parents were never able to kind of help us or guide us throughout the college journey, which I'm sure that a lot of immigrant children can relate to that, like they didn't know, right? I mentioned this because when you're under DACA, you're not eligible for any kind of financial aid from the government. And obviously without aid, it's like impossible to pay for school unless you're like super rich, right? And as I mentioned, I'm one of five. So there was like no shot that like my parents had any savings or anything like that. And when I was in high school, I like knew that it would be hard for me to go to college. I didn't know that it was going to be the journey that I was going to have. And then I didn't have, Social Security or anything like that. So I wasn't able to drive. So going to an in-state college with no kind of transportation. And back then, that was like before Uber and all of that, like right before it got popular. So there was no, I had to go to a school then where I could commute, and that was by bus. And then for me, in-state and out-of-state tuition would be the same because I wasn't getting any benefit because you don't get aid, right? So I chose FIT,
The
Fashion Institute Technology. Yes, that was the very first school that I went to.
Oh, wow.
I went there for exactly one semester, part-time. Very expensive, but it was what we could do. And, in the beginning, it's so random. Like people are like, you went to FIT. I did like fashion, but it's like obviously not enough to go to school for it. But I think as a freshman in college, I didn't know anything. And I was like, that looks good. And, it just worked out. I took the bus, went for a semester. And then during my freshman year, my dad actually got very sick all of a sudden. He had like a herniated disc in his back and it came out of nowhere. And it got to the point where he was like barely able to move. We took him to the doctor and they told him that if he didn't get surgery right away, he would probably be paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. Yeah, it was like really serious, really fast. And we were like, what the heck? And so because of that, I had to drop out of school. And then I was taking care of my dad. I look back on this time in my life with a lot of thanks and it's just one of the most, from what I remember, like intimate seasons with God that I had, because somehow the responsibility, like my younger siblings were too young to take care of my dad. My older siblings, like they were already out of the house.
You're literally the middle child.
I am. I have one of everything. Older brother, younger brother, older sister, younger sister. Yeah, so I'm middle. That's why I have so many issues.
She's the epitome of middle child.
Yes, be good to the middle children, please. No, so it just ended up falling on me to take care of my dad, which I obviously, being that young, freshman in college, I was like, I understood, but it was hard. It was really hard. And I just remember I would be at home like crying because all I wanted to do was like go to like KCC on like, you know what I mean? Like, go to like campus events and like just go to school. And I just wanted to have that normal dorm life. And I was so jealous of my friends who were able to have that, while I was at home and like commuting my dad. Yeah. I mean, by that point I had, so by that point I had dropped out. And then it was really hard. It was a season of, obviously I didn't know then, but looking back, always in hindsight, it was really refining season for me. And I remember this one specific moment where, because my dad didn't have insurance, he didn't have any insurance. So we were like, we can't pay for this surgery. So we really just had to hope and pray with like, things like acupuncture that he would get better or whatever, because this doctor really scared us, you know? And then, I remember we would go around to different hospitals asking if they like offered charity care, which is like when you're not insured, some like they give you free services or whatever. So I remember getting a list of doctors in like the Jersey area, and I was like at my desk, and I just remember calling them like one by one and getting rejected by like all of them and just like weeping at my desk. And I remember like the lights were turned off. It's like one of those moments where you just remember, and I just remember that moment because in that moment, I felt so alone, but it was such a intimate moment because I see that God was there in that moment. And long story short, my dad was healed. He was
Yay.
fully healed. He is fully better. And
Yes.
let me tell you, it was like seriously by a miracle.
Wow.
Like my dad did not end up having surgery. He just ended up getting like really minor treatments and he fully recovered.
Wow.
So
God really, really, really provided in that season.
oh yes. So I know God, you know, as healer and provider. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, that is a lot to go through as a freshman in college.
Yeah. So then after that, you know, my dad got better. And then, and then at FIT, you know, even before my thing with my dad happened, actually, I probably wouldn't have ended up staying at FIT anyways, because I realized very quickly that it was not the school for me. I went for fashion marketing, and I remember I was sitting in English class and the teacher, like our assignment was that we could write a paper on anything that we wanted to write about, like anything. And I wrote about Narnia. And everyone else wrote about like the latest trends in shoes and purses. And I was like, yeah, this is not the place for me. So I realized very early on, I'm grateful for that semester though. Yeah. And then after that, my dad got sick, dropped out. And then I went to NIAC for a year for social work. And I completely switched over. And social work and like the counseling area was always something that I was interested in. But then I think after my experience at FIT, it was kind of more like I was more sure of that decision. And then I went to NIAC for a year, and then like more family stuff happened, more financial stuff. And again, I was paying like out of pocket for these things. I was working at the same time at a nail salon. I worked at a nail salon for like 4 years, and it was hard because it's so expensive. Like school without any aid is like impossible unless you're like, you know, it's so hard. So I had to drop out again after. So I went there for a year, dropped out again. And then that was right around the time when I was finally able to apply for DACA. And then I did the process, and then I finally got my social security and like work authorization, which meant that I could drive and that I could apply to a job that didn't pay under the table, which was huge. And I remember like the day that my social security card came in the mail, and I just looked at it and I was like, what is this that it would define so much of my life, you know? And I really, because you know, all these things I'm talking about now also, these were things that I would like weep about, you know what I mean? Like it was such a burden for me. And I felt so lonely in the journey that I was on when I was early on in college. And yeah, it's just such a testimony that I am where I am now. Seriously, like God has been so faithful, and he's provided every step of the way. But yeah, after that, I got my social. I bought like $1,000 car, Goldie, R.I.P. But she was a very old Oldsmobile. I don't even know if they make those anymore. Very old car, but she was very special to me. Drove her around for a few years. And then because I had Goldie, I was able to attend community college. So I dropped out of NIAC and then attended community college, which ideally I should have done from the beginning, because obviously community college is the cheapest. But again, like I didn't know, you know, like I had no direction. I had no car. Like it was just hard to figure out. So I was figuring it out along the way. And then I attended community college for right around 2 years. But I never finished. I had like a few classes left, and then I didn't finish. Because right around that time, I got a job offer for a company. Like even before that, I was working at like a different salon, and then I worked in Philly for a little bit, lived on my own for like a few months, and then I moved back to Jersey. And then I got an offer for the company that I'm currently working at, which is Medley. And it's like a startup pharmacy company. And then basically I've been working here for like almost 4 years now. Since then, after community college, because I was able to get this job, I was like, oh, there's no reason for me to like go back and finish. But then basically, long story short, last October it was put on my heart again to like go back to school specifically for counseling. And then I was like, God, I'm really like so over the school journey. Like I've already been to like 3-4 different schools. Like, and I'm just, it's not that I'm hopeless. It's just like I was at a point where if I'm already at a job where, you know, it pays the bills, gets the job done, like it's not, I don't mind, you know, it's like very convenient for my life right now. Why would I change it? And why would I like spend all this money to go back to school if I don't have to? But then, yeah, God just placed an opportunity in my life to go back to school. So I'm actually currently in school right now for my undergrad, and I'm set to graduate next year.
Wow.
Yes.
That is quite the journey.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like that must have been so hard figuring out what you want to do while, you know, trying to support your family. Also, you know, it seems like you were trying to figure out your interests and where your passion really lied. And sounds like you're finally, it's like all coming full circle.
Yes. Yes. I think definitely full circle is a really good way to describe it. Yeah. Because counseling has always been something that it always comes back like in what I want to do. And I don't feel like I've never felt like, oh, this is the one and only calling for my life. I've never really felt that way. I think it's just like God has been opening doors for me to go this route. So I'm just trying to follow and just like listen. And at the end of the day, I genuinely don't really care about where I end up, to be honest, as long as it's close to God. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful, though, to be in school because, and one thing that I didn't mention before, after community college, I actually did attend Westman for a year or two online. I like totally forgot about that. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. I was like, there's a school missing.
Yeah.
I did Westman for a year online. So that was that. And then I transferred over to the school that I'm currently at. So I am, yes, set to graduate undergrad.
I feel like that is so unconventional
Very
from like the average college student.
Yes.
But yeah, I feel like probably each door and each season, you know, formed and shaped like your perspective. And I feel like you bring so much experience.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Perspective to, you know, like not everyone has a similar pathway to finding, you know, that dream job or calling.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have so many testimonies that just will solidify when you know, finally graduate and you'll really be able to celebrate.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like it's so timely because it's at a time where you have also founded yourself within a very loving community and you are in a completely different life stage.
Completely different life stage.
And by that, I mean you're a married woman. No longer the 19-year-old, you know, hopping from school to school.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, tell us about that. How did you meet Pastor Chongdae? I have to get used to calling him pastor. But how did you meet Chongdae? What was your first date like? And how's marriage life going?
Marriage life is good. It's good. It's challenging. We always knew of each other, just, you know, like mutually. The first time I really interacted with him, I did go on a missions trip with him in 2019. I was volunteering for the youth, and he was in his last year of pastoring the youth. And then I volunteered for this trip. It was so random. Like, even while I was packing, I was like, why am I doing this? Because I just, like, I wanted to serve the youth, but I didn't know anybody. And it was like just something that I really spontaneously decided to do. So yeah, that was the first time that we really interacted, and then you know, texted, whatever. You know how the story goes. And then long story short, I asked him out first. I did.
Where? Where did you guys go?
Our very, very first date. Well, our very first DTR was at the Starbucks near church. Our first date, we went hiking at Mohunk, which is like 2.5 hours away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He planned that one.
Cute.
Yes. Yeah. So that was our first date. And yeah, marriage has been, we just recently passed our 1 year last month.
Yay.
Yeah. 2 months ago. Oh my gosh, I keep forgetting it's August.
1 year, Annie.
Yeah. 1 year. I personally feel like I've been married for 10. I feel like I've been married for so much longer than 1 year.
I wonder what he would say.
I feel like he thinks the same thing. Yeah, but it's been good. Yeah. Learning a lot about laying down my own pride. You know what I mean?
Sacrifice.
Yes, yes. When people ask me what's the best part and what's like the hardest part, I always say the best part is going to sleep and waking up together. And the hardest part is having to lay down myself like daily, because even when you fight, it's like, oh, I have to go to bed with him. Like, it's like, it's kind of awkward when you're like so tense. Not that we haven't had those moments, but it's like, it's hard, like my pride is very strong. So it's good. I love being married. Yeah.
I'm curious, like, who are maybe friends or mentors that you guys go to either build relationships with or get even counseled by or get advice from? I'm sure that's an important part of marriage.
For sure. I mean, Pidon and Pidai have been like so, and I feel like our church just feels this way. I'm sure so many people can say this about Pidon and Pidai, but really from the very, very beginning, I'm pretty sure they were like the first ones that we told. And they were so supportive, and just not even through like, giving good advice, but we had really difficult times too. Yeah, this is something that I actually don't mention often, but during our dating phase, we actually did have a point where we broke up once too. And it was a really, really difficult time for both of us. And they were like right there the whole time. And yeah, with counsel, with prayer, with a lot of love, and yeah, just knowing that like someone genuinely knows your heart and still loves you, I think that changes everything. So they are probably our go-to people, which I'm so thankful for, because I really consider them like friends too. You know what I mean? Like they have seen us through many, many seasons as a couple. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
So I feel like, maybe just a congregation member or someone who just, comes out to Sunday, they might see Pastor Chongdae and just see him as like, the speaker or the person on stage.
Yeah.
So I want to ask maybe something more personal, like how do you think you guys complement each other?
Complement each other. I would say he is like the steady rock. And I am like the fun butterfly. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I think I help him to be himself. And I think he helps me to love myself.
I like that.
Yeah. I just thought about it.
You are the fun butterfly.
I am a butterfly. Yes. Is that
a little words of affirmation for Chongdae who's listening?
Yes. No, for people who know me, they know that I have so many things I want to do. I want to go here. I want to go there. I want to do this. I want to do that. And those are great passions and hobbies. But I think Chongdae is so good at calling out, like, he reminds me of my calling, like of what I'm meant to do and like who I am when I'm like, because, doing all those different things, like sometimes I get lost and sometimes I am really hard on myself. And like, it's, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm speaking very abstractly. So it's just,
you touched on before when talking about, just finding your way through college and settling down and, what you're studying now is finally counseling. I feel like that is very in tandem with kind of what you do for our church. You are the leader of our prayer ministry. And yeah, I just want to say that you have been an amazing prayer warrior over our church.
Oh, thank you.
And I think I've noticed over the years how much Esther has also grown, just in her prayer life and her leadership, because I think it started off with like pre-service prayers before service. And then I think it transformed into EMPs. I mean, we have done EMPs in the past, but I know this past season you also led our church through a Lent prayer series where you guys would Zoom in every morning to pray together with the church. And there's also praise and prayer nights that you lead. And so, yeah, you are a prayer-filled woman of God, and you seem to be very passionate about prayer. So, yeah, where does that passion come from? You know, how can you encourage our church to pray more and to really make that a priority?
Well, I think the whole prayer culture of PEM, it has grown so much along with the spirit of PEM and the people of PEM. But I think it is very important also to understand like the history of our church. And Debbie is actually one of the ones that started EMP, like, what was it, back in
Oh,
like
God. It was
20,
like my sophomore year of college, which was 2011, I think.
yeah, like starting like the genesis of PEP, you know what I'm saying? So Debbie's actually one of the, really, really OG people who planted and really like sowed the seed of prayer in that way, even in her college years, being faithful in that way. And also like just shouting out like Joe and Deb, who I know they used to do like it was basically praise and prayer nights. I think they called it like Encounter or something. And that was for like a season, I think, or for, I don't know exactly how long it was, but I know they did that. Sue Park, she used to lead prayer nights at her house. I remember going like when I first joined PEM, and sometimes it would just be me and her. But it was like such, even when I see her now, we always talk about it because it was such like a spirit-filled time, even when it was like just us two. So, I mean, she's amazing too. And during COVID, like prayer leaders who started and maintained, our church prayed every single day for a year. That is
Wow.
crazy. And I really had barely anything to do with it. I mean, leaders who led this initiative like Victor and Sarah Ha, and then all of the other leaders who actually led, the dailies, prayer days. Like, it's just, there are so many people at PEM. Like, the only reason why a prayer team is possible and like this culture that we're building is because of the prayers that were sowed from like 10 years ago.
Right.
Like PEM just passed its 10-year anniversary. Like, I'm under no illusion that this is something that's recent or like something that is like just been birthed, but this is something that I think God has been building and teaching and cultivating in our house. So I'm so thankful for that, to be surrounded by people, like even like praise and prayer nights, like they're not possible with people who don't want to come out and pray. You know what I mean? I'm very grateful to be in a church where people like yourself have taken that initiative to pray. And Debbie also comes out like almost every Sunday for pre-service prayer. She's too humble to say it, but she's like always there for like every prayer meeting. So yeah, the intercessory team is something pretty recent. And we have around like 5 people who are like officially on the prayer team. It's kind of low key because I think some people just think that we have like prayer meetings, but there is an actual prayer team that meets. And we do meet before service every Sunday, 1 p.m. in the upstairs balcony. And that time is always really, there were a lot of times when it was just me, which is fine. And for me personally, like it has stretched me a lot because there have been so many Sundays when I'm just like, I know it's going to be just me and I'm like, I don't want to show up, right? But it has become a time where God has like really stretched my faith, because I'm at a point now where I genuinely believe that our service is impacted if we don't have this prayer time. And that's not being like, oh, look at how great our prayers are. Like, it's not that, but it's just like, that's how much I believe that God hears his people, you know? Like, I really think that the team that meets and prays over our congregation, like, they affect the way that service runs. So that's why it's like all the more important. I feel so weird if I miss a 1 p.m. now, because I'm like low-key worried, like, oh no, you know. So yeah, the 1 p.m. prayer time has been really special. Oh, and like before I even started that, by the way, I forgot to mention Kristen, who recently just got engaged. Shout out to her. She actually, when I first came to PEM, also started that initiative as well. So all of these different things. I mean, EMP, you began, you know, praise and prayer nights, like OG, you know, started by Joe and Deb, like 1 p.m. service prayer started by Kristen. Like all of these things, they're not like original ideas from me in no way. It's really just kind of, I look at it as like passing down the baton.
Right.
And yeah, I'm so thankful. Like even on our prayer team right now, we have a few amazed people who like the younger generation who loves to pray and loves to serve the Lord. Hallelujah. So like, I really see it as like a heritage, right? That like we get to pass down to the next and the next. And that's kind of what I'm hoping will happen with our church. Yeah.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like prayer, yeah, I really love that. I feel like prayer is such an act of humility. And like you said, it's truly the prayers of those people who are consistent and genuine in their faith that have sown the seeds of where our ministry and where even our lives are today. And like, as you were speaking and, you know, giving shout outs to like all these people that like paved the way.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't help but think of like our parents and like the first generation and even like the KM at our church, you know, even though, you know, we might have cultural or language differences, it's like we are the fruit of their prayers that they've harvested over decades.
Yeah.
And, you know, we are reaping as an English ministry because of them. So shout out to the parents too and the elders.
All the praying.
Yeah.
All the praying
seriously. All the prayers in closets and bedrooms and, you know, classrooms and even early morning prayers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love that you were able to just like highlight, you know, prayers like incense that we all kind of are able to lift up.
We all contributed to, and I, like you asked, you know, where do you think that prayer kind of mindset comes for you? Like for me, I grew up with my mom, like hearing her go inside the room and pray. Granted, she would always come out like interrupted because I was being too loud always. But it was, you know, it's like memories like that when I'm young, when I'm just like, oh, my mom is praying. Like it was such a ingrained thing in me to rely and to seek, you know, before doing anything else. And I think that is something that I'm so, so grateful for, that I really believe that, like, you know, I get to have passed down from my mom too. I know your mom is a huge prayer warrior as well. So I really believe, you know, it's like a heritage, like it gets to be passed down. And it's so cool to see because, it's so true. Yeah.
It's cool to think that this prayer culture that we cultivate at our church can also be passed down and shown to like PEM kids and the future generation. But yeah, I mean, as much as, you know, other people, we can credit other people, I truly feel that you are gifted in prayer. And, you know, I'm sure it's not easy to also go up and lead prayer and pray prayers out loud and also be consistent in it when I think, you know, prayer can normally be very emotional and just like as you're feeling it or as you will it. So I'm curious, like, do you struggle, you know, to pray in a ministry context sometimes? And also like so many people struggle with prayer in their personal life. So how can you kind of speak into that?
Yeah, I definitely struggle plenty of times with praying when I'm leading in any context, because I think it's really easy kind of like mix up like my own personal convictions versus convictions that God may be giving me for our church and for our congregation. It's hard to differentiate that, and sometimes it ends up being synonymous, a lot of times not. So that is something that I'm always very careful about. But at the end of the day, I would say for people who are struggling to pray aloud because you're nervous about what your prayer sounds like, or, anything like that, praise God that it's not dependent on the eloquence of our words, or even, and I say this carefully, like even the state of our hearts. And I say that because I always have to remind myself, like, it's about the God that I'm praying to. That is like the beauty of even coming like with your weakest prayer, is that I feel like when your heart is just kind of in that resigned state to God, like, I'm here because I have nothing else. I think that's one of the best places to be. In the Bible, it says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall see God, and I think that's talking about not even like a broken state necessarily, but it's a sort of desperation that, like, I think when you have that, it's so much easier to pray. But yeah, I struggle with that a lot. I have said this to some of my friends. I struggled a lot during the time that I presided because I would have to pray and then do announcement. And I felt crazy because I would always be crying.
Right.
And then 5 seconds later, music stops and I'm like, welcome to prayer. I felt like a clown. Like, that was actually, I really struggled with that. And then there was a period of time when, even before that, like, I struggled with, people, some people don't like it when people are like crying or emotional during prayer and whatever. So I was like, I'm like trying not to be so emotional, know? But then I would replay like some of my presiding and I look constipated because I'm trying to hold it in. Like, I straight up look like I have to, like, you know what I mean? And I know, like when you're holding back tears and it's like, because you're trying so hard not to cry. And then I kind of just got over all of that. And I was like, you know what? If it comes, it comes. Who am I to stop the Spirit of God from moving in my heart? Or, and it's especially hard, obviously, when you're in a leading context, because you really feel like you're bearing a part of your heart to the church. And it's like, you feel so raw and naked. And it's like, so that's hard. I think in that way, leading prayer is really hard. And for me personally, prayer has always had to be authentic. Yeah, just praying authentically and being honest with God. He knows what's on your heart anyways. Just be honest. He's not like intimidated by what you're going to say. But I'm very lucky because I had youth pastors that taught me also firsthand and showed me the power of prayer. Like, we used to have FNFs, like Friday night fellowships, where we would literally just come and pray for 2 hours. And I'm not saying that I was like praying every single time I was in youth group, but it was like that context, that space, being alone with God and like people just crying out, like my pastor leading. It was so like natural to me, and it's been very natural for me. So in that way, I think like praying on my own hasn't been like, it's never felt, I guess I've never struggled in that way, like feeling awkward or like, I know some people struggle with like, I feel like I'm talking to nothing or like, which I totally understand. But, I think because it was modeled for me at such a young age, like that was like, that's like the way to talk to God, like, and then it helps that I love talking. So I'm just like, hey, God, Yeah. So being honest and yeah, prayer has always been a little bit like, just like, what else would you do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what else can you say but pray? Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's funny because recently I've been asked if I wanted to try presiding, and I was nervous about all of those things that you mentioned about, it won't be authentic. I might stumble on my words and might, like, how do you force it and how do you lead prayer? But like you said, I feel like the prayer culture can be pushed, in any church. And I feel like you've really, helped like show that just to be bold and confident in your prayers and to just be unashamed. I feel like, I think because because it's such a private and personal thing, I think it's hard to speak those words out loud sometimes.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
like, I would love to, I don't know, hear our church rise up in their prayers. And
and you'd be great at presiding.
oh, thank you.
You should totally
totally
do
that.
it. Yeah.
Let's skip that portion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your heart of prayer, your service with us, your different college ventures.
Yes.
Your family. And yeah, I can really see how all these different parts of your life really has shaped you to the woman that you are. And she's genuinely one of the most funniest people I know.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, I hope that people get to know you even more.
Thank you.
Yeah, anything else you wanted to mention, or any call to serve and join?
Oh, yes. Come and pray. Come and pray for our church. I think if you're on the fence, or even if you're not on the fence, just consider it, ask. And we always need more people praying for the church. We have plenty of opportunities. I don't think I mentioned, even the Wednesday night prayers that, Christian has been leading have been so good, I think. There's so many different places and spaces to pray together. And especially if you're struggling to pray on your own, I think praying first in a community context, it can help a lot. So please don't be shy and come. Again, we're on the balcony on 1 p.m. upstairs for Sundays. That's just for Sundays. But everything else, just listen to the announcements. Yes.
Well, I guess to close this off, are there any prayer requests that you have that our church can pray either over you or you and Pastor Chongdae?
Prayer requests. Yes. I would just say that I do feel that I know this sounds kind of cliche, but I really do feel that a new season is on the horizon for us. So if you could just pray that we would remain on the straight and narrow, you know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of noise, but if you could just pray for us that we would remain in the center of God's will for us, and just stay close to God. I don't know what's happening half the time. So I just want to stay close, and the heart of seeking, I need a heart to want to pray, pray, it's not just about the act of praying, but I need to want to pray. So please, pray for both of us, that we would always have that and that it would grow in us. Yeah.
We will be praying over you.
Thank you.
Oh, one last thing. If we want to get connected to you, how can we hit you up?
Oh, probably through Facebook Messenger is the best way. Yes. Or if you ever see me at church, please, happy to give you my number if that's the way you want to talk.
Sounds good.
Yay.
This was so much fun.
It was so much fun.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I hope everyone